It's kind of the root of my message here that the Lord has helped me put together. So he went and got one. He had a grocery store. He didn't have a construction business, and one brother was offended. Said, your business is not, you don't need it in your business. And he said, I got so mad for weeks. I was walking around and fuming. I was angry. And he was making plans to leave the church. He said the Lord started working on him. And he recognized where it's going, his attitude. Now, the attitude I would probably had, I'm free in Christ. The Bible does not say that I can't have a cell phone. I'm going to have one. That is an attitude that cruises through a lot of churches. But he decided to give it up. He called the bishop up and said, I'm going to give my phone up. And he said, the peace I had, I would do anything for it. Originally, I thought about, well, I'm glad I'm not in that culture. I don't have those problems. But there's a principle behind this that's in the Bible. Today, I want to go through some verses. First, we're going to, and by the way, when you are angry, when you're upset with a brother in church, you know how high your joy level is? It doesn't get above your heel. The word offense says attack, misdeed, or insult. The Greek says cause to fall, ruin, stumbling block. Let's look at what attack means. Try to hurt or destroy with violence or words. I'm probably more famous with the words. To set, to walk on. Second meaning. Misdeeds means wrong deeds. Insult is number third. Treat with contempt, insulting acts or remarks. That brother had 6 souls. 6 souls that he was head over. As I pondered it, how did that witness to the family? What I've seen throughout the years, children act what their dad acts. When they get offended, they blow up. They leave. They leave church. Let's go start another one. 25, 20 years later, the same cycle blows up again. Because they don't give up when they're offended. In Matthew 18, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, and go, tell him fault between thee and him alone, he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee 1 or 2 more, that in thy mouth 2 or 3 witness, every word may be established. If he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglected to hear the church, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican. I don't think I have to say how hard it is to walk to your brother sometimes when you get offended. I know I've lost a lot of sleep on it, but when you finally give up and let the Lord follow the Lord's word, there's much peace. Rising above the fog of offense. Number 1, a new commandment. I'm going to read a lot of a script here at John 4. This is based on John 14:31. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciple, if you have love one to another. Romans 12:9 and 10. Let love be without hypocrisy. The Greek meaning says play or actor. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affected one to another with brotherly love, in honor preferring one another. Search your own life for blind spots. This is number 2. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Life on earth is not a script which we meaninglessly act out. It is a time of deciding whether or not we will live for God, and then living out what we've decided. Because God will examine what kind of workers we have been for Him. We should build our life on His Word and build His Word into our lives. It alone tells us how to live for Him and serve Him. Believers who ignore the Bible will certainly be ashamed at judgment. Consistent and diligent study of God's Word is vital. Otherwise, we will be lulled into neglecting God or the true purpose for living. Do you find at times when you take the Bible and you peg this to Jim, you peg that to Joe, this is Sally, this is Jane. That's her problem right here. The Bible says, study to show thyself approved. God help us when we, with an open heart, no offense in our heart, we can see this is for me. Number 3. I think I'll go to Luke, if I can find it here. Luke 4, or Luke 6:41. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eyes, and perceive not the beam that is in thy own eye? Either how canst thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote that is in thy eye, when thou thyself beholdest the beam that is in thy own eye? Thou hypocrite, cast out first the beam out of thy own eye, and thou shalt see clearly to pull out the mote in thy brother's eye. The Bible used beams, and I've used the word log. We have a lot of logs, kind of the same thing. Remove the log out of your eye. Jesus doesn't mean we should ignore wrongdoing, but we are not to be so worried about other sin that we overlook our own. We often rationalize our sin by pointing out the same mistake in others. What kind of specks in other eyes are the easiest for you to criticize? That rings very true. When I start criticizing, it's usually something that I'm fighting in here. Remember your own logs when you feel like criticizing. You may find you have less to say. Jesus reminds us that our speech and our action reveals our own underlying belief and attitudes and motivations. A good impression we try to make cannot last if our heart is deceptive. Let's look at number 4. Go tell your brother his offense between thee and him alone. These are guidelines for dealing with those who sin against us. They were meant for Christians. This message is for Christians. Christ said offense will come through the world, and we all know that. I try to teach my children, if they're going to use the fist, if they're offended and they'll use the fist, they'll never get done. It'll continue to their oldest age. They were meant for Christians, not unbelievers. Sin against you and not others. And conflict and resolution is the context of the church, not the community at large. Jesus' words are not a license for a frontal attack on every person who hurts or slights us. They are not a license to start a destructive gossip campaign or to call for a church trial. They are designed to reconcile those who disagree so that all Christians can live in harmony. When someone wrongs us, we often do the opposite what Jesus recommends. We turn away in hatred or resentment, seek revenge, engage in gossip. By contrast, we should go to that person first, as difficult as that may be. Then we should forgive that person as often as he or she needs it. Matthew 18:21 and 22. This creates a much better chance of restoring a relationship. Number 5. All things. Forgive the offender and move on. All things are lawful for me. All things are lawful for me. This is Corinthians 10:23. All things are lawful. All things are lawful, all for me, but all things are not expedient. Another word for that is helpful. All things are not helpful. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not, do not build up. What is he saying? He said something offends like that phone offended a brother. He said it doesn't edify anybody. And Paul says, whatever is cast before idols, I don't eat it if somebody is offended, I'll never eat it. Corinthians 10:31. Where therefore ye eat and drink, or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense neither to the Jews nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of God. This is a direct right to the church. Even as I please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit. That word profit is not my own good. But the profit of many, that they may be saved. Believers are to be selfless rather than self-centered. 2 Corinthians 6:3. Giving no offense in anything, that the ministry be not blamed. In everything he did, Paul always considered his actions communicate about Jesus Christ. If you are a believer, you are a minister for God. In the course of each day, non-Christians observe you. Don't let your carelessness or undisciplined action be another person's excuse for rejecting God. And this I pray, that your love may abound. Philippians 1:9, Philippians 1:9 and 10. And this I pray, that your love may abound. And this I pray, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and in judgment, that you may approve the things that are excellent, that you may be sincere without offense till the day of Christ. Acts 24:16. And herein do I exercise myself to have always a conscience void of offense towards God and towards men. Humility is the key of not getting offended. When the fog of offense is lifted, there is much joy in the heart. Now I can pray, thy will on earth be done as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debt as we forgive our debtor. Lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Other night we were driving home Wednesday night in the fog. Two people, we were both just up in the dash and like, okay, you're too far over, go this way, go that way. The fog had almost taken everything in that we couldn't see. And so it is when you have offense in your life. You can't see. When the fog is lifted, now I see to visit the widows and the orphans. When the fog is lifted, now I see how God first loved me. When the fog is lifted, I see how to love my neighbor. When the fog is lifted, I see how to pray for my fellow man. When the fog is lifted, I see how to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. When the fog is lifted, now I can weep like Jesus over the vast sea of humanity that has no shepherd. That's what the Lord had me to share this morning.
So, I have something I want to discuss with y'all, and I want to question a little bit something we all have heard, I've said, I've heard a lot of people say, and it's a phrase that comes up a lot. Now, I don't know if you can all see that, but it says, God is in control. Now, I'd like to question that a little bit today, and we're going to explore some scripture, and we're going to see, is that really biblical? And if it is, what do we mean by that when we say this? So, let's make that a question. So if you would all turn to Job chapter 1. What do we mean when we say this? Do we simply mean God is sovereign? Because if that's true, then yes, absolutely, God is sovereign. But if we mean that everything that happens in this earth, everything that happens in the world is somehow God's doing, is that biblical, is my question. So let's turn to Job, and we're going to start reading in chapter 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." So Satan is the god of this world. He roams about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Verse 8, Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." So what does Satan believe? He believes every man is selfish at their core. He believes we only love God and honor God because of what God does for us. And in a lot of cases, he's right. And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power." I'm going to jump over to Luke chapter 4. You don't have to turn there. I'm going to be right back here. But in Luke chapter 4, verse 5, it says, "Then the devil, taking him up on a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said to him, 'All this authority I will give you, and their glory, for this has been delivered to me, and I give it to whomever I wish. Therefore, if you will worship before me, all will be yours.' And Jesus answered and said to him, 'Get behind me, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve.'" So, all of this has been delivered to Satan. Now, who delivered it to Satan? Where did that come from? How did Satan obtain all of this authority? Well, it was sin. It was the fall of man. Adam, when man fell, all of this authority that God placed on man was delivered to Satan. And it's rightfully his. "Behold, all that he has is in your power," verse 12. "Only do not lay a hand on his person." There's where sovereignty kicks in. Do not lay a hand on his person. So Satan was asking God to do to Job what only Satan does. He asked him to stretch out his hand against Job, and he says, "It's in your power." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and a messenger came to Job and said, "The oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them, when the Sabines raided them and took them away. Indeed, they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you." So who did that? Who motivated the Sabines to come and raid Job's children's houses? Was that God or Satan? Satan. While he was still speaking, another also came and said, "The fire of God fell from heaven." Was it the fire of God? No. While he was still speaking, another came and said, "The fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another also came and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 bands and raided the camels and took them away, yes, and killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, yet another also came and said, "Your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they are dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you." So Job, the servant said the fire of God fell. Job believes that. It reveals here by his language and everything he says that Job believes this was God who had turned against him. Then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and he fell on the ground and worshiped. There's his integrity God was talking about. He said he's blameless and upright, and there's no one like him on the earth. He fears God and shuns evil. He worshiped, and he said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Was it the Lord who took it away? No. Was God in any of this, that all of this cursing and all of these things that was taken away, was God in any of it, or was it Satan? Job believed it was God, and he still blessed God. That's his integrity. But if we have the same mindset, if we believe that everything that happens to us is somehow God's will, we're gonna really struggle to have a good relationship with him if we believe he's causing all this pain in our life. That's what the story is here to reveal, because if you read through the next 40 chapters of Job, it's a result of Job. His language is, why has God turned against me? What must have I done against the Almighty? But who am I to judge him, because he alone is God? And all of these emotions and his friends come and try to help him. It's all a result of people who have wrong theology. In all this, verse 22, in all this Job did not sin nor charge God with wrong. Again, there was a day, chapter 2, again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without a cause." Now here's what I want you to understand. Normally in the English language, when the word incite means to turn one against another. When he says incited me to turn, although you incited me against him to destroy him without a cause. Now, let me ask you this. Can Satan change the heart of God? Can Satan talk to God and change him and make him do something? No. So, what is he really saying here? Did God do any of this? But Job believes he did. So what he's saying is, although you incited me against him to destroy him without a cause, what God is saying is, although you made Job believe, I've turned against him. And to destroy him without a cause. He still holds fast to his integrity. So Satan caused Job to believe God had turned against him. So Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin, yes, all that a man has, he will give for his own life. That's what he believes about all men. That whatever we have, we will give up for our own life. He believes we're all selfish at the very core. Yes, all that a man has, he will give for his own life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. So now he's back at this again. He's asking God to stretch out his hand against Job. Has God stretched out his hand against Job at all so far? No. He's asking him to stretch out his hand against Job again. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. There you see sovereignty kicks in again. He says, you're not going to kill him. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. So I kind of want to bring us back to this. What do we really mean when we say God is in control? If we simply mean he's sovereign, absolutely. It reveals he's sovereign when God says spare his life. But if we mean everything that happens in this world, in this life, everything that happens to us is the will of God, then we're deceived. And we're going to end up just like Job and his friends. And then if you read the rest of it, it's a pretty big mess. And it's going to cause a lot of turmoil in our souls. And Job went through that. Even though he held to his integrity, he went through a lot of turmoil in his soul because he believed God had turned against him. And that's why there's so many people that are angry and mad at God today, because they believe that God is the one responsible for their pain. They believe he's the one that is causing them to go through all of this. And in reality, it's not that at all. Now, God can take what the enemy meant for evil, and he can turn it for our good. Our job is to remain faithful in the midst of all of the things we go through, all of the trials of this world, all of these things. Our job is to remain faithful to him and hold fast in our integrity. We don't have to be deceived in believing that it's God who's inflicting it on us. But he is faithful to us in the midst of it. And he can use those things and bring it and turn it for good and for our benefit. In Romans, it says, all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So, like I was just saying, we love God. We are called according to his purpose. He will turn and work all things out for good. But let's not be deceived in believing that all the sin, all the heartbreak, all of the destruction in the world is the result of God. It's sin that has destroyed man, not God. In John 10:10, it says, the thief does not come except to kill, steal, and destroy. But I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. So that's all I have to share. I hope this was encouraging to you.
This is on or working. Thank you, brothers, for sharing, all of you, the worship team, and everybody that worked together. Thank you for taking the time to bring us God's word. It's a little shorter than normal today, but there was a lot packed into